Welcome to the Foundations of Nutrition. There is so much misinformation and dogma in the nutrition world because we're only entering this new understanding of our individual physiology and our independent metabolism. If we can look at how emotional people get around eating, it's often because they found something that worked for them and they assume that it would work for everybody. But the genetic revolution really reveals why a certain diet might work for you and not work for me. And the more that we can assess physiology, the more that we can make sure that we're not shooting in the dark when it comes to fueling the brain and body optimally, and that we're not getting caught in these sort of wars around which diet is best, and that we're setting a really healthy relationship to eating, fueling, and nutrition for a generation. When we think about nutrition, it's so important to realize that we're talking about how we fuel our brain, not just our body. We're talking about brain metabolism and how certain foods will influence how my brain functions, performs, and develops. And then, of course, the same thing is true for my physical body. So when we think about food and food intake, we can break things down to the three major macronutrients: fat, protein, and carbohydrates. We can look at what a calorie is, which is a unit of energy, and ultimately we can look at our own metabolism and recognize that we can control our own metabolic fire through a lot of the practices that we're going to share throughout this program. A roaring fast metabolism is like a sauna that is just ready to consume logs of wood. You can feed it a log and it will suck it right up. And a metabolism that's slowed down quite a bit is like a sauna fire that's barely hanging on. You put a log on and it kind of just crushes the thing, right? So when we teach youth and families about nutrition, for one, we're trying to ultimately assess as much physiological information as we can, specifically genetic information and metabolic information, to understand what's going to work for their body. But then we can also share broad principles about how the metabolism works in general, what are practices to increase metabolic rate, what did the major macronutrients do, and then of course we can get into micronutrients and get a better understanding of this complete picture of how we fuel this powerful system. The main goal of this module is to make a distinction between dogmatic and no dogma nutrition advice and be really clear about what works for all, meaning all of us need enough fuel intake to support activities and hopefully not so much that we end up putting on additional adipose tissue and carrying around an unhealthy amount of weight. It's a universal principle. But whether you should be on a higher fat protocol, a lower fat protocol, how you need to fuel that powerful body of yours is going to be dependent on your independent physiology. So in this module of no dogma nutrition principles, we're going to again talk about metabolic rate, how calories work, what macronutrients are, and create a framework where the first thought isn't necessarily six-pack abs, it's optimal brain health. And we recognize that when we fuel, we are fueling our brain first. And then, of course, again, we're fueling our body. And we can become the architect of our brain and body by becoming the architect of what's on our plate and understanding its constitution. So I'm excited to really share this distinction between no dogma nutrition principles that work at large and how we can look at the new insights into individualized personal nutrition and really get precise about how we can eat and nourish and fuel our body for optimal mental and physical performance.